What is the point of Dawn Summers? Was she just written to be annoying? Did they not know what to do with her after season 5? Or was she actually thematically relevant, just deeply misunderstood? The more I rewatch Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the more I realise Dawn's story is severely underrated. She didn't just exist to drive one season's plot, or to annoy the audience. Her entire journey reflects some of the show's most important themes. So today, let's dive into the Buffyverse and unpack why Dawn matters so much more than she gets credit for. First impressions, the fandom's misunderstanding. I'll admit, when I first watched Buffy, Dawn was just there. I didn't hate her the way some people did, but she definitely wasn't a favourite. But the more I rewatch the show, the more I've come to understand her and honestly, empathise with just how much she goes through. Most of the characters in Buffy have a rough ride, but Dawn's trauma often gets overlooked, both by fans and especially by the characters around her. She's often dismissed as the annoying little sister thrown in for plot convenience, with the writers not really knowing what to do with her after season 5. But that's selling her character short. Dawn's story arc is actually about becoming her own person after having her entire existence ripped apart. She starts as a mystical plot device, but by the end, she's one of the most grounded and real characters in the series. Dawn's arrival wasn't random. Dawn's appearance in Buffy the Vampire Slayer season 5 might have shocked viewers at the time. One minute, she's an only child, and the next, she's got a teenage sister who seems to have always been part of the family. But if you look closely, there are subtle clues about Dawn's arrival scattered throughout the earlier seasons. The first hint comes back in season 3, Graduation Day Part 2, when a comed Faith mutters, "Little Miss Muffet, counting down from 730. It's actually a cryptic reference to Dawn that gets brought up in her first episode. Then, in season 4, Faith's dream in this year's Girl has her saying, "Little sis is coming." The foreshadowing becomes even more intentional in season 4's finale, Restless, where Tara says in Buffy's dream, "Be back before dawn." This wasn't just a random line. It was a deliberate hint planted by the writers, building anticipation to what was to come in season 5. By then, Buffy had been renewed for season 5, so the creative team could plan ahead, and Dawn's arrival was part of that bigger plan. The clues were there all along, pointing to her arrival as a significant moment in the series. She wasn't just a plot device. Her presence shifted Buffy's world in ways that would impact the rest of the show. Her introduction, the audience was meant to be confused. Dawn's introduction wasn't just surprising for the audience, it was designed to throw us off. There was no big reveal, no flashy prophecy, she was just suddenly part of the story, like we were the ones who'd missed something. That confusion? Completely intentional. And by the time we learn who and what Dawn really is, we've already accepted her as part of the group. She feels like she belongs, bickering with Buffy, dropping casual references to past events like Ted the robot, all the memories she shouldn't actually have. Originally Dawn was meant to be much younger, but when Michelle Trachtenberg was cast, they aged her up. And you can feel that awkwardness in some of the early dialogue. My personal theory? The monks who created her had absolutely no idea what a teenage girl was actually like, so they just guessed. And honestly, that helps a lot with watching her character. But for all the chaos around her arrival, Dawn's first episode, Real Me, does a brilliant job of showing us who she is. Frustrated, insecure, and desperate to be taken seriously. From the very start, she's calling everyone out for not really knowing her, and how could they? She barely knows herself. Dawn and Glory, two sides of Buffy. One of the most overlooked reasons why Dawn matters is how she embodies Buffy's central struggles, the impossible balance between being a Slayer and being human. From the moment Buffy was called, she's been torn between the unstoppable warrior that the world needs and the ordinary girl that just wants to live her life. In season 5, that inner conflict becomes external, split into the two very real, very opposing forces, Dawn and Glory. Glory represents raw power, godlike strength, with no compassion, no connection to the people around her, and unstoppable. She's detached, self-obsessed, and sees humanity as insignificant. Dawn, by contrast, is all emotion. Fragile, powerless, but fiercely connected to the people she loves. Her strength comes from feeling everything, even when it's overwhelming. It's not just coincidence. It's the writers mirroring Buffy's internal struggles. Early in Season 5's The Replacement, Xander is split into two versions of himself, the competent, confident half and the awkward, insecure one. This is the same idea for Buffy with Dawn and Glory. Riley points out that Buffy's Slayer side is practically unkillable, just like Glory, while Buffy wonders if Riley could love her more if she was just Buffy. Kinda like Dawn. Dawn's existence forces Buffy to face what she's sacrificing as she leans further into becoming a Slayer. Dawn grounds her, reminding Buffy of the ordinary life that she's constantly leaving behind. Without Dawn, the conflict wouldn't hit nearly as hard, and Buffy's story would lose one of its most personal emotional anchors. Everything Dawn knew was a lie. One of the most heartbreaking parts of Dawn Summer's story is how her entire sense of identity is ripped away. At first, Dawn thinks she's just Buffy's younger sister, dealing with school, family drama, and the usual Hellmouth chaos. But that sense of normality is shattered the moment she overhears the Scoobies talking about her like she's something else entirely. With Spike's help, because, of course, Spike is the only one willing to help her find the truth, Dawn discovers the impossible reality. She's not Buffy's sister, she's not even human. She's a mystical key, pure energy forced into human form, with a manufactured past created by the monks. Her memories, every family photo, even the way she thinks about herself, none of it was real a couple of months ago. And before Dawn can even process what this means, her world crumbles again when Joyce dies, leaving her without the one person who could ground her in reality. Already reeling from the truth of her origins, Dawn is thrown into grief and survival mode, with no time to understand what being the key means or who she's supposed to be now. With Buffy drowning in her own grief, Dawn is left even more isolated, desperately clinging to any scraps of normality she can. Dawn's story is often dismissed as teen angst, but it's so much more than that. It's about someone fighting to exist, to find her place in a world where her very existence is fabricated. It's messy, it's painful, and it's one of the most overlooked emotional arcs in the entire show. Living with guilt and sacrifice. Dawn's life was never going to be simple, but by the end of Season 5, the weight of what she's endured is devastating. At her core, Dawn believes she's a burden, and it's hard to argue when you look at what happens to protect her. Tara loses her mind, Spike is beaten within an inch of his life, and ultimately, Buffy sacrifices herself so Dawn can live. That moment on the tower, Buffy choosing to die in her place, leaves Dawn with an unbearable guilt. Dawn was ready to jump, ready to make the sacrifice herself, but Buffy won't let her. Whether it was the right call or not, Dawn is left to carry the weight of surviving, knowing her life was only possible because her sister gave up her own. It's a reality that no teenager or person should have to live with. Even Buffy's final words, "The hardest thing in the world is to live. Be brave. Live." Sounds inspirational, but for Dawn, it's a painful reminder. Every day she keeps going is a day Buffy isn't there, and that's a burden she never fully escapes. But somehow, she keeps going. Struggling to find her place. If you thought Dawn's trauma ended with Buffy's sacrifice, think again, because Season 6 is just as brutal, in a completely different way. With Buffy gone, Dawn's left trying to piece together some kind of normal life. But how do you do that when your entire world revolves around someone who's no longer there? And instead of closure, she's given a Buffy bot, a hollow version of her sister, smiling and playing the part, but with none of the emotional warmth or love that actually made her Buffy. It's heartbreaking to see Dawn curl up with the charging Buffy bot, desperate for a sense of comfort. It's a constant reminder that the person who made her feel real in the end, who anchored her to the world, is gone. And with the portal closed and Glory defeated, Dawn's left asking the hardest question of all. If she's not the key anymore, then who is she now? When Buffy comes back, traumatized, emotionally vacant, and utterly lost. And suddenly, it's Dawn, the youngest and least experienced, who's left trying to pull her sister back into a world that Buffy doesn't want to be a part of. As Buffy and Willow both spiral, Dawn's the one holding everything together, even as she's drowning in her own grief and identity crisis. Dawn was never created to be strong. She was meant to be protected. But the reality of her life forces her into a completely different role. The fact that she not only survives it all, but manages to keep caring, loving, and trying to find her own sense of purpose shows just how much strength and resilience Dawn Summers really has. Fighting to be seen. If there's one theme that defines Dawn Summers' journey, it's her constant fight to be seen, not just by Buffy, but by everyone around her. By season 6, the people she loves are so caught up in their own struggles that Dawn fades into the background, treated more like an afterthought than a person. Buffy is back physically, but emotionally closed off. Willow is spiraling deeper into her magical addiction, and Dawn? She's just there, forgotten and invisible, even to the people who are supposed to protect her. The only person who constantly sees Dawn, really sees her, is Tara. Tara always made an effort to include her, to check in, to make sure she wasn't overlooked. But when Tara breaks up with Willow and has to leave, Dawn loses that one lifeline, reinforcing her growing sense that she doesn't matter to anyone. For a brief moment, things seem like they're getting better. Willow and Tara reconcile, Buffy starts to engage a little more, and Dawn finally feels like she's part of the family again. But just as quickly, Tara is ripped away from her. After everything Dawn's been through, the small act of choosing to stay with Tara's body, choosing to be there for someone who can't even see her anymore, says everything about who Dawn truly is. She's not just a kid sister, a key, or a plot twist. Dawn is someone who's been overlooked, dismissed, and underestimated, but still shows up for the people she loves, even when her heart is breaking. And that quiet resilience makes her one of the show's most underrated characters, becoming her own person. By the time Buffy reaches its final season, Dawn has come a long way from the scared little sister everyone felt the need to protect. During the climactic battle at the end of season 6, Dawn steps up without hesitation, sword in hand, fighting alongside Buffy and the Scoobies. It's a pivotal moment where she's no longer the key, or just Buffy's kid sister. She's Dawn, standing her ground, proving she's capable in her own right. That confidence follows her into season 7, where we see Dawn carve out her own place in the fight against evil. Starting high school, she handles the usual Sunnydale horrors while actively helping to protect others, showing the same bravery and compassion that's always been at the core of the Scoobies. But her quick thinking and loyalty make her indispensable. One of the best examples of her growth comes when she's told that she isn't a potential slayer. There's no resentment, no bitterness, just quiet acceptance. Instead of clinging to the spotlight, Dawn immediately shifts her focus to supporting the real potentials. Proving her worth isn't tied to a mystical destiny, but to who she's chosen to be. And that's exactly why Xander's speech about Dawn hits so hard. While everyone else has been caught up with the Slayer legacy, Xander's the one who watches Dawn become extraordinary in her own right. Showing up, doing the work, holding everything together. Dawn Summers may have started as a plot device, but by the end, she's a fully realised character. She no longer needs the validation of the people around her. She has created her own life and is valuable simply because of who she is. Dawn Summers may have started as a mystical plot device, but by the end of Buffy, she's so much more than that. She's proof that even characters introduced for a specific purpose can evolve into something far deeper, a fully realised person with her own strengths, struggles, and story to tell. Her journey from fabricated sister to strong, compassionate young woman who finds her own sense of purpose, is one of the show's most underrated arcs. Dawn's fight to be seen, to be valued for who she is, beyond her mystical origins, mirrors so much of what Buffy herself is about. Becoming your own person, even when the world tries to define you as something else. By the end of the story, she knows her own worth and is content with where she is. So the next time you revisit Buffy the Vampire Slayer, take another look at Dawn. Behind the teenage frustrations and the early awkwardness is a character who quietly endures much more than most and who keeps showing up for herself and for the people she loves. And that resilience, that's what makes Dawn Summers truly matter. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to see more character analysis like this, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss them. And as always, thanks for watching, and let's see what other secrets we can uncover next time on Nerdy Investigations.